Good morning, everybody. Well, I hope y'all are doing good. December 21st, I'm sitting out here just in a hoodie. Got my boat pulled out a little ways, and it's 50 degrees or something. It's crazy, but we're going to talk about crankbaits. You can tell I'm surrounded by crankbaits right here, and this is one of my favorite times of the year. It always has been. I love fishing in the winter, and it's always about a crankbait. I've caught a lot of bass doing a lot of other things in my life in the wintertime, but on the average, sure enough, when our lake levels are a little lower like they are now, it's been about the crankbait. And I think there's a lot of I think the crankbait doesn't get a lot of love sometimes, in the respect that, as an old guy I fish with all the time, he's like, oh man, that's trash fishing. You know, he grew up slow fishing a jig and a worm, and you don't have to think about throwing a crankbait. So we're going to talk about crankbaits, and I'm going to do another video after this one on another part of crankbaiting. But yesterday we fished that tournament again. We had another tournament yesterday on beaver. We come in 5th place, had 17.16. A mix of, we had 1 smallmouth and 5 largemouth. Caught them all on a crankbait. And you know, it's all about cranking, and we've been catching a lot of big fish for the last few weeks, but they've been on a spinnerbait. The water's been in the mid to upper 50s. Just hasn't been cooling down, and they just haven't been getting on the crankbait for us. I just haven't been able to get them figured out. We've been catching them on a spinnerbait, but finally this week, the mid-lake has gotten down to 51, and some of the upper part of the lake's kind of getting into that 49, and so it's starting to happen. For me, crankbaiting is all about really from 51 to 38. That 40-degree temperature range is where crankbait bite really gets good for me in these clear water highland reservoirs. And I have a process around cranking this time of year. And I see a lot of guys go, oh man, I'm just gonna tie on a rock crawler and go tear up just throw it all day long. That's all I'm throwing is rock crawler. Or I'm tying on a wiggle wart and I'm just gonna go throw a wiggle wart all day. And sure, that'll work at times, but I have a process with cranking, and it's the one time of year I'll have out a lot of rods. Like yesterday, I had 7 rods out. All of them had crankbaits, but every one of them was different. And the way I go about it is when I'm beginning to crankbait fish, a crankbait, like you see these 2 boxes are just, every drawer's full. A crankbait's kind of like that snap-on toolbox I have over there. There's wrenches in there, screwdrivers in there. The crankbait is like those wrenches, and you have every size, from one of them's a 10 millimeter, one's 11 millimeter, one's a 13, one's an 18, and they all do a very specific purpose to do a very specific thing, whether it be the way it moves through the water, whether the depth that it'll dive, and all that matters, because this time of year what you're doing is, for me, is I'm targeting specific little areas, and one of them may be a foot deep, and one of them may be 12 feet deep, but they're all maybe rock, a little piece of brush, a patch of rock, a strip of gravel, an isolated piece of wood or 2, just any number of things. So what happens is you can't chuck a rock crawler over in the biggest pile of trees and expect you to do there, and you can't chuck it up there in a foot of water and expect to not get hung up. So what I do is I start out with all these rods, and every trip I start out with kind of a set of rods, a pretty vast assortment. I usually keep my colors pretty simple, crawfish colors, maybe a few shads. Here where the water's still warm, shad patterns really work until the water gets cold again. So I'm going to walk you what I had rigged up and how I go about the day. But first of all, I'm going to have some type of square bill. So this is going to be a really shallow diver. This is, it's an old RC in a red crawdad color. This is 1.5 crawfish. I'm going to have a square bill of some sort. Now that could be this. It could be a, you know, something like a Spro Little John is a really great bait in the wintertime. It's got that flat side. It's got a nice wobble. This is a bait I've done extremely well on. But I'm going to have a really shallow diver, square bill of some sort. The key to these is you can bring them through that really shallow rock, some wood cover, anything that's ultra shallow, you can work this bait through down to about 3 feet. I throw it on 14-pound monofilament line, and I use it for my shallow water targets. So, you know, if I pull up on a bank and I'm wanting to fish right on the bank out to 3 feet, I'm going to use these top baits, the square bill top baits. Next, I'm going to have a larger square bill of some sort that's kind of going to fit the same bill. When the water's warmer, I want to have something in a shad pattern, a little bit bigger bait, more your, you know, this is an RC 2.5, a Balsa B2, a Rebel Mini R, a bigger shad colored bait. I want something, a chartreuse color, sometimes if the water's stained, but it's going to imitate a shad. This is the bait I'm going to turn to whenever I run into a wooded pocket, and even some of these really, you know, paralleling along shallow rock. This bait, at times when the water, it'll catch that one fish you need. So I always have one of these handy. It's not something I'll probably throw all day, but I want to have one that I can pick up and use in that situation. Next, I'm always going to have something that's kind of the start of the deeper divers. Like this is a little Rebel Humpy. Y'all see me talk about this bait a lot. The deep we are, some smaller little crankbaits that they make out there, but this is going to be a smaller size, maybe a 3 to 5 foot diver, but it's a lot more subtle bait. This is again, it's just the shallow patches of rock. These work really well like on gravel at times. But I'm going to have some type of smaller crankbait on. Like I said, a little Humpy, Rebel We Are. There's a lot of different brands out there. Just a smaller deep diver that I can fish around just whatever. Now we're going to get into my favorite stuff, and this is more your standard fall stuff, but this other stuff, you got to have it. You can't just narrow-minded down the crankbait, and that's going to be your rock crawlers. The rock crawler, you know, this is a 55. The 55 MD are excellent baits for digging that rock in that 5 to 7, 8 foot range. This is what I'm going to turn to. The rock crawler, and man, just the classic wigglewort. The wigglewort is probably the greatest fall winter bait that was ever made. I will turn to the wigglewort. I throw the rock crawler mostly on 14. I throw wigglewort on 10 always. The lighter line does make a difference, but this is going to be that 4 or 5 to about 7, 8 feet depth of water you're wanting to fish. So those banks that maybe the 45-degree angle banks, bluff lines, where you're setting out off some gravel or fishing patches of rock that are out a little bit deeper, this is the bait I'm going to turn to. Normally, 60% of the bass I catch are probably going to be on the wigglewort or the rock crawler, because that's kind of the range you're looking for. But it takes putting all these things together to put together a good stringer like we did yesterday. Next, I'm always going to have one. Now this is a Norman deep little end. The rock crawler 55 will do this as well, but I've always liked the little end. A little end on 10-pound test monofilament. You can hit 11 or 12 feet deep with this bait. And I always have one of these rigged up for that isolated rock pile, an isolated little piece of brush that's maybe off a point, off the side of a bank that I know there's probably a wintertime bass sitting in. So this bait's not gonna get thrown a lot, but it is gonna get thrown in very specific spots, maybe off a bluff line where I wanna target a little bit deeper. I'm gonna have this bait sitting there at all times. This time of year, I'm really all about crawfish, some type of crawfish pattern, browns, greens, reds. I don't think it matters that much. Just some type of crawfish pattern is what the majority of my baits are going to be. and getting into some reds and some chartreuses, fire tigers, depending on, like today we got a nice cloudy day. Those chartreuse colors and the bright colors will really pay off for you. And the way I just go about breaking down the day is I just get to fishing, because every day is a little different. You can't just tie on one lure and just go slinging it and expect to see what's unfolding that day. So just like yesterday, I started out with 7 rods. We narrowed it down by the end of the day that the majority were coming on the square bill and the wigglewort. And one of us buckled down with one and kind of the other, and just kind of pieced it together though. But I still will pull up and go, this is a little bit deeper spot. I want to throw that Norman here. Or this is a really, really shallow bank. I mean, my boat's a cast off the bank and I'm at 3 feet of water. I'm going to throw the square bill here. And just allow that to dictate how I'm going to fish the day as we go into the winter time. And it can be ultra effective. Some days you'll see a bite unfold that they're just on that shallow stuff, and you're going to throw that square bill, and most of the time. Or you're going to see the day that they're in that 7-8 feet of water, you're going to probably fall back to the rock crawler, the wigglewort. That's the one that's really going to catch them for you. But I've had so many times that I've had 5 fish, or I've had my limit and I needed to cull one time, that I stop on an isolated rock pile. I've got that deep little end sitting there. I stop on that, I catch a key bass, a 3-pounder or something off something I haven't fished all day long, but I wouldn't have made that cast or done that if I had to sit down and re-rig another rod. I had that rod handy. I was able to make those few throws to something isolated or a specific spot, and I caught that key bass that made my entire stringer, that maybe got me in the money had I not had that bait there, or that big, the big square bill of some sort, that one wooded pocket off the end of a bluff or something like that you go, I'll just pick this up and fish this next 50 feet into that pocket. I have that bait there handy that's not going to hang up, and catch a key bass. And it may be the only one you catch on it all day, but you had to have that fish. That's how I kind of go about crankbaiting. I keep the kind of the doors all wide open. As the day goes on, I normally narrow down to kind of the ones that seem to be working the best. But that's how winter cranking goes. You just gotta keep your mind open. Like I said, it's one of those times of year, it's a little frustrating to me. I kind of like to narrow my rods down to 4 or 5 that I know I'm gonna fish with all day. But this time of year, when I'm cranking, I have way too many out. But I want to have the right wrench, the right tool, the right crankbait for the right kind of cover, for the right cast to catch that key fish that I know I need. And that's the only way to do it effectively. Cranking, we're just now getting there, folks. The next month, December, December's nearly over, but going into January, normally by now the water's a lot cooler. We've already been cranking for a month already, but we're just now getting there. So I think we're going to have the next 30 days or so. It's going to be warm all this week. May push them back to that spinnerbait again by the next tournament if it doesn't cool off. But get out and do some cranking this winter. It is the way to catch them, and it's super fun beating that old bump, just bumping that thing along those rocks. Super cool way to fish. It's been really effective for me all my life. Get out. This time of year is the time to be there. Fished all day yesterday. Seen, even with 40 boats on the lake fishing tournament, just pretty well had the lake to ourselves. And boy, the fish bite. They bite like crazy. So get you a handful of crankbaits, rig up all those rods, and get after it. You'll have a blast. We'll catch y'all later.